Hi everyone, today I'll be teaching you how to do a value scale. So first you want to measure out 10 inches onto your page. You're going to be making a 10-inch rectangle and there will be 10 sections. So that would be 10 1-inch sections. So this part of my video got kind of cut off, but as I continue to make my boxes, you'll be able to see the 10 1-inch sections. So here I have my full rectangle, and I'm just going in and adding my 1-inch sections, making a straight line using my straight edge for every 1 inch. Here I'm just lining up my edges to make sure I have straight lines for every 1-inch section so that I have nice even boxes to do all of my value sheeting in. After I've created each of my boxes, I'm going to go ahead and clean up my lines, and then I'll go back in and label each box so I know which value goes in which one. And there you have it. That's the layout for your value scale. Next, we'll be adding our values. When creating your value scale, you want to make sure that you have a nice sharp pencil. This will be good for your hatching. Here's an example of how to do hatch marks. They're short, quick, parallel lines that are really close together. That's one style of shading that we call hatching. The next style is making hatch marks in one direction and then doing hatch marks in the opposite direction right over top. That's called cross hatching, another great technique for shading. And finally, our last technique is blending. So you do your typical hatch marks or cross hatching, and then you'll take this little tool called a tortillon or a blender stick, and you'll blend over your hatch marks to make a nice smooth tone. You can also achieve this look by rolling up a paper towel or a tissue and blending over your hatch marks. When starting my value scale, I always like to start with the last value. This will be your darkest. I personally find it a lot easier to go from darkest to lightest. So my 10th value will be my dark black if we're doing a grayscale. So for this one, I'm going to apply the most pressure and do really thick, dark hatch marks. And I'll probably cross hatch too to make sure I get it extra dark. And then as I continue my value scale, I'll go a little bit lighter. As you'll see throughout the video, I may switch and go back to the front of the value scale so I can work back and forth to get all of the values in between. So now I'm going to jump to the front of my value scale to start to work my way up to my darks so that I can more easily find all of the values that are in between. That might be a little too dark for my first value, so I'm going to go back in with my eraser and pick up some of the graphite to make my first value a lot lighter. The number 1 on your scale should be almost as white as the page, so super light. That's much better. Now I can move on to my second box, which is going to be slightly darker than the first box, but still fairly light. You want a nice, smooth transition between all of your values. For the third box, I might press a little bit harder or even do a little bit of cross-hatching just to get it slightly darker than the second box. And as you continue to move through your value scale, you'll need to move back and forth between shading and erasing to make sure that you have a nice smooth transition all the way through and that there aren't too big of jumps between different values. So now I'm noticing that there might be too big of a jump between some of my values, or that they may be too close to some of the darker values. So I'm just shifting some of them to make them a little bit lighter so that there's not too big of a jump and that I have more space to spread out my values and get a little bit darker. I'm turning off my light just so you can see better, because it seems like with the light on there was a little bit of a glare on my last 3 boxes, and I want to make sure you can see the really smooth transition between the 8, 9, and 10. The middle ranges are always the hardest, so 5, 6, and 7 may need to be adjusted as you complete the beginning and end of your scale. These 3 boxes are where it's most crucial to make sure there's a really smooth transition, because like I mentioned before, you don't want a big jump between values. It's always helpful to take a look at your value scale and compare it to one that you might find on the internet to see where you might need to shift your values and what you might need to change. And as I mentioned before, as you continue to work on your value scale, you may need to go and touch up other sections. But here we have it, a nice smooth range of tones that we can use in our drawing. Thanks for watching.